Hi everyone, welcome to Incite Your Month. It's our monthly collection of ideas, recommendations, books, articles, all the things from our curiosity diet that we think you should benefit from. I have Harish with me. Hi Harish.
Hi Ramanand.
All right, so Harish, we kick things off with our pick of book for the month. So this book is not a recent book. It's a book called The 360-Degree Leader. It's by John C. Maxwell, someone who's well known in the space of management books, leadership books. The reason we chose this book was we recently did a session around this book, part of a quintessence series where we summarize books for teams. It's a very interesting book. Unlike a lot of other leadership books, it's targeted at people who don't think of themselves as leaders. These could be people serving as middle management. These could be even young engineers who've just started their careers and they really don't think themselves as leaders. And I think the main message is very powerful. The fact that you can practice leadership from any corner of the organization. If you're in a traditional organization, you might be at the bottom of it, the middle of it. You can still practice a form of leadership that is very useful. A lot of interesting one-line takeaways from the book, but if you were to establish the SAR of the book in one line, it would be that leadership is essentially about influence. So if you can learn about influence, there are some great books. We've also recorded some topics around that in the past. So think of leadership as influence, not as leadership. And I think people will get their leadership journey going.
Yeah, I was reminded of AB de Villiers as you were speaking, right? He's known as Mr. 360 degree because he plays all around the wicket. And yeah, if you think of him, he's probably another 360 degree leader because even when he was not officially the captain, he was the leader on the field. Even when you had somebody as strong as Virat Kohli being the captain in the RCB team, he would still go to him for inputs. And you could see his presence on the field. Maybe that's the kind of 360 degree that you were looking for, and he's just a natural at it.
Yeah, and our session actually had a picture of AB de Villiers just to establish that context. So, yes, you can be a leader from wherever you are. That's the message of the book. Pick it up. It's over a decade old now, but I think still worth a read. So, from leadership, let's go on to technology. This is our pick for article of the month. And this is a New York Times article called AI is Mastering Language. Should we trust what it says? And that is the central idea of the article. It goes into it's a really long read and it
First,
goes,
first question, Raman, was it written by AI or a human?
no, it was just written by a stupid human called me, but to steal the thunder of the author there. So Stephen Johnson is the author of this article. He's written a bunch of really good books on things like innovation, things like where ideas come from. And what he does is an in-depth exploration of something called as language models, which are changing the way that neural networks and AI programs are generating language these days. GPT-3 is perhaps the best known of this family, the most recent member. And there has been a paradigm shift in how AI programs are now dealing with language, and language models are a big part of that. One part of this article is will help you understand the world of language models, how AI programs are using that. But there is a connection to humans. Now, if this was really generated by an article by an AI program, how would you look at it differently? Would you look at it differently? Should you look at it differently? These are all going to be questions that will increasingly surface, come up in front of us. And so, if you're interested in understanding the march of technology, I think this is one article that you should reserve some time for. So that's our pick for of the month. And from that, let's go to a different topic. Let's go on to the world of smartcasts. So, a smartcast is Choose to Things in-house podcast. Harish, what have you chosen for that pick for us?
Yeah, it's an interesting contrast to what we just spoke about, right? Because this is a smartcast with Krish Shankar, who is the group head human resources at Infosys, and he's written a book called Catalyze, which is about energizing the people ecosystem in an organization. And he's written about different frameworks. The book actually reads like a good actionable playbook. And my question to him was the main question that I had for him was, okay, this is great. How do people get started applying all these ideas? Because he's talked about everything from what should people look for when they are hiring and how to keep them motivated and all of that. Really good, useful book and very useful frameworks as well. Yeah, I mean, he talks about how do you actually get people to do more, which is why I said this contrasts what we spoke about earlier. One thing that I really liked about the entire book was that he has taken that jobs to be done framework or lens that Clayton Christensen talks about to different functions, and also looked at HR as a function, that what is the job that HR is trying to do for the organization, and then reimagine the role of HR in the organization and look at all different functions. So I thought it was like very first principles thinking about HR and not get stuck that this is what we've always been doing in HR. So yeah, we just do an incremental change there. But he's looked at what are the different frameworks and how to get people to get motivated to do different things in the organization. So yeah, very good, interesting book. And the conversation was also interesting because I threw in some curveballs to him. I asked him things about how he interviews people and what is he looking for in people and all that. And he handled them quite well. Complete impromptu questions going out of the literal syllabus of the tech of the book that he had written, but still he managed them quite well.
Yeah, in fact, this what we've spoken so far, some of our friends who are in HR people functions, their world is changing quite rapidly, and I think they know that some of them are trying to deal with that. So I think you should, while you listen to veterans who are also changing with the world, do look at the book that we just recommended earlier in this episode, as well as the article on AI, because all that is going to shape your world in the days and weeks and years ahead. So, Harish, staying on the topic of people, organization, and culture, let's bring up our smart lever of the month. A smart lever is a short episode that we do around different mental models, concepts, ideas that you should be put as part of your arsenal of tips and tricks. We've chosen, in keeping with our recent series on culture repository, the last time we spoke about the concept of culture debt. This time it's culture what?
It's culture repository, something that you just mentioned, Ramanand. So this was an episode that you and I had recorded some time back, basically where we were talking about what is the culture repository of an organization, what does it constitute, and how should one go about building it. It's not something that you should get stuck about what are the tools, what are the platforms. Those are all secondary. First is just get the idea of what a culture repository is, which is these stories, anecdotes of people living the culture that you are trying to profess and propagate and scale. Anecdotes from within your organization, as well as some external stories which also model the kind of behaviors and values that we are talking about. And the playbooks, the processes that are being followed, the people processes that are being followed in the organization. If you can pair a best practice with an anecdote of how it's being done in your company, it's going to be very powerful in terms of getting your point across to everyone in the organization. So think of what your culture repository should be. So we've talked about it. We've talked about the Amar Chitra Katha version and all those things as well. So go check out that episode Smart Levers on culture.
All right. So from that, let's go to our last section. This is more of a change in approach to how you consume information, something that we are very conscious of here at Choose to Think. This is our podcast pick of the month, but it's about reading. So the idea is we have chosen an episode on Econ Talk, famous podcast series. It features Tyler Cowen, well known for being a famous prolific reader. And so on this episode, we have Tyler Cowen talking about his reading habits with the host of this episode, Russ Roberts. Very interesting episode in the sense that it covers a lot of these habits around reading that you can incorporate, but they help you overcome some of the bad habits. So, example of a bad habit is that I must complete a book end to end, and if I get really bored after 50 pages, it's I cannot drop this along the way. I must make my way painfully to the end is something that I think a lot of people have now spoken about, that don't do that. Just drop a book if you don't like, or the fact that you can read multiple books at the same time. But some more advanced ideas. So, for one, for instance, is reading in clusters or reading about a topic, reading multiple books around a topic at the same time. If you're reading about culture, you take up one book, and then next day you're reading about, say, AI. maybe what you should do is just spend time on culture, read 3 to 5 books on that topic. And interestingly, someone like Tyler Cowen does not take a lot of notes while he's reading, because what he does is that he says, I would rather reread that book very quickly, and then I would also read a bunch of other books on that same topic, and you will see common themes emerging, and that is good enough to build that context in your mind. So the key takeaway for me was that you learn in clusters, and you then invest in building context around ideas rather than trying to remember books. For everyone listening to us who read a book and a day later cannot remember anything in it, it's okay. It happens even to Tyler Cowen. So you don't focus on memory, you focus on building context. That's the key takeaway from this very excellent episode. Especially if you're a reading habits geek like all of us here are, you will enjoy this episode.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we come to the end of this collection of recommendations from us at Choose to Think. We'll see you once again next month. Until then, see you.
Bye.